Hi there, welcome to your podcast for college Catholics, where we discuss faith and spirituality from a Catholic perspective. I'm Father Patrick. Today we will welcome Father John Ezratty. He will be talking with me about how he discerned his vocation to the priesthood in Miles Christi. Father John was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and he joined the religious order of Miles Christi at the time of its foundation in 1994, and has been a priest for now 20 years. He studied philosophy at the Pontifical University of Argentina and theology at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome. He's been a pastor, professor of philosophy, and spiritual director at the Miles Christi Seminary in Argentina. And in 2010, he came to the United States. He's currently our local superior in our community in Detroit, and he preaches retreats, conferences throughout the whole United States. And he also provides spiritual direction to countless college students and missionaries and young adults. And he's also a FOCUS National Chaplain. So welcome to our podcast, Father John. How are you doing?
Father Patrick, thank you so much for having me. It's just a big joy to join you today.
Yeah, my pleasure too. What have you been up to lately?
Well, actually, I've been traveling quite a bit. A week ago, I was in Argentina for some meetings with our Superior General and so my family as well. So we had a beautiful time with my family. We spent 3 days by the ocean, close to Buenos Aires. And
so your family they all live in Argentina, right?
Everyone is in Argentina. My parents, my siblings, and their children. So we spent 3 days together as a family in a house by the ocean, just spending time together. We didn't know how cold or warm it was going to be, but it was beautiful. So there were days in which we went for walks and played by the ocean. It was very, very beautiful.
Where you went to? What city or what town did you go into the ocean?
The name of the town is Pinamar.
No way! I used to go there when I was a kid.
Wow! I had been there before. I think when it was 5.
For summer only.
Yeah, I went there when I was 5 years old, so I didn't remember anything about it. But they say that it changed a lot, actually.
Yeah, probably. It's been growing constantly all the time. Anyway, well, good. That's a great time with your family, and always good to be with our family and remember our roots. So, so now you're here in Detroit, Michigan, as a priest in Miles Christi in the United States. How did that happen, right? How did God lead you from being a young man in Argentina and Buenos Aires, sometimes going to the beach and the ocean, to being a priest now in the United States? How was your vocation story, let's say?
You know, it's a very interesting question, actually. I always talk to the people I give direction to, how you never imagine what is going to happen in your life. We want to have everything planned out, but then God shows that He's in charge. If you ask me that when I discerned my vocation to the priesthood, I would have thought that I was going to be here in the States speaking in English to people on a podcast, I would say absolutely not.
Right.
I mean, I just wanted to be a pastor, and that was my main idea when I discerned my vocation. But little by little, God kind of shows the path. I think that is what He does with every single person. When we want to be in charge, when we want to plan everything, it doesn't work out. So it's about just trying to see what God asks. And that is what happened in my life. I've been a priest for 20 years, as you said, plus 10 more of formation in Miles Christi, so 30 years in religious life. And I can tell that God, little by little, was showing me the path through my superiors, through the circumstances in life. Everything that I was living showed me what God wanted me to do.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I think that dependence on the providence of God is essential for everyone, right? So God leads our path, leads our way, and we should allow Him to guide us and to trust, right? Trust in His grace, trust in His providence, trust in His plans, right? So you were born and raised in Argentina. We went to high school in Argentina. When did you start your discernment, and what was that helped you discern the priesthood?
So yeah, I was born and raised in Argentina. My parents wanted me to go to a Catholic school. So I went to a Catholic school run by the Marist brothers, who is a wonderful order of brothers. I really love them, and I owe them my vocation, actually. I pray for them every day. I remember later in time I was in Rome, and I had the grace to witness the canonization of their founder, Saint Marcelin Champagnat. It was beautiful to be there. So the brothers are the ones who, after my parents, shaped my life of faith. So my parents wanted me to go to a Catholic school, and they sent me to this school. And since I was, I would say, 12 years old, I felt always attracted to a life of consecration, always thinking of, living for God and for his people. The brothers are teachers, and I always loved to teach. I always remember playing teacher with my siblings when I was a kid. I would teach them and give them tests and correct them with red. I always liked that. And
Did you ever fail them?
No, I never failed them, but I was pretty demanding, actually.
Wow.
They always remember that. But it was always a game, but I always loved it. So it was kind of this idea of living for God and for his people and teaching. So I was very much attracted to the life of the brothers in the school. However, you know how things are. When I moved into high school, always in the same school, the school was K through 12. I finished my middle school and I moved into high school. And kind of I dismissed the idea of the consecration. It was always in the back of my mind, if I have to be honest. But I started thinking about being a physician, and that was really in my heart. I think that it is very related to the priesthood now that
Absolutely.
I look back, right?
Absolutely.
So my idea was to be a physician and to help people by doing that. And that was my plan. As I was moving on in my high school years, I would always tell the people that I want to be a doctor. Then during my junior year, I remember going on a retreat, and that retreat changed my life. The interesting thing is that I didn't want to go to that retreat, but somebody convinced me, and I eventually went. So we went on a retreat, and there was a priest there that was giving a talk about the sacraments. And as he was explaining the sacraments, the moment came for him to talk about holy orders. And the way in which he explained the sacrament of holy orders was through his own vocation. And he mentioned how he discovered his own vocation when a priest was talking to him in a group about his vocation.
Wow.
So the priest was talking, and this priest that was talking to us said, and at that moment, I thought, why not me? And I tell you, at that moment, when he said, why not me, I asked the same question to myself, why not me? And that was the first time in my life that I thought about being a priest. Because as I said, in the past, it had always been about being a brother. And
right,
now,
consecrated life in general, let's say.
Yeah, I didn't know very much what it was to be a consecrated person or not. I just loved the life of the brothers. But now it was very concrete. It's just being a priest, celebrating the Mass, hearing confessions, preaching, being in a parish. I was very much attracted to it, but immediately it was a matter of an instant, if you want.
Wow.
So I remember after the talk finished, we had some time of prayer. And I went to this little chapel. There was a small tabernacle, and I was by myself there with the Lord. And I remember kind of talking to him and saying, well, Jesus, I wanted to be a doctor, but now just you brought up this idea of being a priest. So what should I do? And I didn't hear any answer, actually.
Okay. That's a follow-up question, right? Did you ever hear an answer telling you this is what you got to do,
No. I mean, I never heard any voice or angel or something telling me you got to be a priest, Father John, or Johnny, or whatever you want to call me at that time. But it was kind of an interior certainty. I thought, well, being a priest is something awesome.
Right.
In itself. Just to be able to consecrate the body of Christ, to forgive sins, to preach. Then I thought, I would like to be a priest. It's something that attracts me. And then I thought, I think that I could be a priest. I think that I could study and become a priest. And I didn't see in myself anything that would prevent me from being a priest. So when I thought all these things, I said, okay, I'm going to be a priest. And that's it. I mean, I kind of made my decision at that moment. Of course, as you know, then you need to go to a priest and talk to him and make a formal, if you want, discernment.
Of course.
But the decision was made pretty fast, actually.
Right, and what is incredible is now, seeing you 20 years later, after being a priest for 20 years, we can tell that what you thought about was true. You can be a priest, you're teaching, you're preaching, you're directing people, you're so talented in many ways.
I remember my friend, there was a friend there, the one who invited me to the retreat, and he was the only person that I talked to about this idea, this crazy idea that had come up in my mind. So I talked to him and I said, I don't know. I wanted to be a doctor, and now I want to be a priest. And he said, I will never forget, he was 16 years old at the moment.
Incredible.
And he told me, if you become a priest, you will still be a doctor because you're going to be a doctor of souls.
Wow.
And I still remember his answer when we were 16 years old.
Wow. It's incredible because my dad was a doctor, and he sometimes said the same thing to me, right? That he takes care of the body, to some extent of the soul, and he needs God's help. That I, as a priest, was now taking care of souls and helping the overall health of people, right? So he was a psychiatrist also, but it's incredible. This young kid, he spoke, in a sense, it was God's answer through him.
Yeah, very, very clear. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, at that moment, of course, I didn't realize it. But when I look back, I see God talk to me through that young man, which is how God actually talks to us, right? Sometimes we, as we were saying, we expect to hear a voice or to see something, to have a vision, or who knows what. But the Lord talks to us through circumstances, through people, through the people that you would least expect that will represent God for you at that moment.
Right. And what other thing do you want to tell us about that process that took you to the priesthood? What other steps do you think were important? Or, was there any doubting at some point where you were thinking, no, this is not for me? Any other thing that was important? I mean, especially to share with college students, right?
Yeah, well, obviously, even though I made my decision, quote unquote, at that moment, discernment is long. It takes time because that is prudence. You don't make a decision like this in a minute and then you just start your formation process. So for me, as I said, there was never a struggle at the beginning about my becoming a priest. My friend knew the people who were with the project of Midas Christi, among whom you were, Father Patrick, there too. So he introduced me to all of you guys, and with the project of starting this order of Midas Christi. Late teenagers or early 20s, and I remember.
How old was I? At 19? Something like that?
You
20?
were 20, I guess. Yeah.
20.
No, I always remember that. And I remember this friend of mine introducing me to all of you, and just the perspective of being a priest in a community and teaching and preaching and working with college students was so appealing to me, that for me was another way in which God talked to me.
Right, which that is a charism of Midas Christi, right?
Correct.
Where we're working with college students, we're directing our ministry and apostolate to help college students live in the state of grace and grow in holiness.
Correct. That's what we're doing here, what we're doing now,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
But, you asked me if I had doubts, and the answer is, of course. I think that it is absolutely normal for a young man or a young woman who are discerning their vocation, especially to the consecrated life, but any vocation, to have doubts throughout the process of discernment. So even though there was this clarity at the beginning, then throughout my years of discernment and formation, who are many, actually, I did doubt. Obviously, I thought, is this for me? Am I going to make it? What if I am not happy? What if this is difficult? What if I suffer? And all these doubts, that you always have, and the devil uses them actually to divert us from the path that God is showing to us. So yeah, I mean, to answer to your question, I did have doubts several times, actually.
Okay, and in general, right? Of course, you may or may not remember the specifics of those doubts, but suppose that I'm a young college student and I see that I'm called to the priesthood, but I'm in the process of formation or something, and I start having serious doubts. How did you come out of that? Well,
what I always did was to go back to the first discernment, because I had prayed about it. So doubts many times come because you are not praying well,
or tempted, right?
Or you're tempted. Yeah, the devil uses all these things to bring up these doubts in your life. So sometimes it's because you are not praying well, or you are concerned about something that is distracting, or because you're human, actually. All of us, it's normal. I think that any guy, any gal that is dating another one, many times they ask themselves, is this the one? Is she the one? Is he the one? So the same happens when you are discerning the priesthood. So what I did many times, and I can suggest the people who are discerning a vocation to the consecrated life to do the same, is first and foremost, go always back to the beginning of your discernment. When you discerned already that, yes, I think that God is calling me, to go to that first call. And then to talk to a priest always, to talk to somebody who will help you see that what you are experiencing doesn't come from God, that it usually comes from the evil one, or our human nature that, wants to run away from sacrifice or things like that. So what I did is always trying to go back to that moment of the first decision to say, well, but I really saw that I wanted to be a priest, and I want to be a priest. So it's not about running away from the cross or suffering. It's about serving God, serving His people, and doing what the Lord is asking you to do.
And also, because this podcast is for all college students, and many probably at some point will be married, or most of them, let's say, I think that principle also applies to marriage, right? So I'm called to marriage, I'm married with this woman, and I'm having a struggle with her, or a temptation, or something else, but this is the woman I'm married to, and I have to go back to my first decision. Why did I choose to marry this woman? And that totally applies also for that case, right? So to dispel temptations to infidelity and to be faithful to our first choice before God, right? I think that applies.
Yeah, especially when there is already a commitment, as you are saying, right? If you are married, are there going to be temptations? Yeah, there might be temptations. Maybe not to be unfaithful, but doubts or whatever. We are human beings. We need to understand that it's part of our human nature, and those temptations or those doubts are opportunities that the Lord is giving us to strengthen our vocation, to recommit, to say, yes, I want this. Something that I always tell the people is our vocation, whatever that might be, vocation to the religious life, to the priesthood, to married life, is always a yes, a choice. I remember when my brother-in-law and my sister celebrated their 10th anniversary of marriage. I remember sending an email to my sister. I was already here in the States, and I sent her an email congratulating them, and she responded so wisely. She said, yeah, it's incredible that it's been 10 years, and here we are choosing each other every day.
Wow.
I think that is the key to happiness in every vocation, to choose that vocation every day, whether it is the consecrated life, the priesthood, or married life, to make this act of choice, knowing that the Lord called me here and He will continue to give me the grace so that I can fulfill my vocation in His presence.
Very good. Well, that's awesome. Now, was there any decisive element that helped you decide toward the priesthood that you remember? Or what was that decisive element?
The priesthood is something so vast and so beautiful. I think what made me think immediately that I would love to be a priest is the idea of celebrating the Eucharist. Just the fact that God comes to your hands when you say the words of consecration, and also, obviously, the sacrament of confession. The idea of opening heaven to people, the idea of saying, through my lips, the Lord will receive people in heaven, people who maybe were away from Him, and the Lord just gives them His mercy through the priest. So that was always very, very appealing.
That's very good. And probably now you must have celebrated thousands of masses and thousands of confessions and also thousands of events or sacraments where you see the grace of God, who is all-powerful and almighty, working through you and through your hands. So could you give us two anecdotes or one anecdote in your life as a priest where you saw the action of God in the salvation of souls?
Wow, what a question. I could give you a million, actually. But one that I remember very well, and I'm still amazed at it, is this was a year ago, more or less. There was this gentleman that used to come to our chapel here in South Lyon for daily mass, and he moved down to Florida because the weather was better, actually, especially in the summer, in the winter. And then he stayed there for health reasons. So I remember him calling the office, and he wanted to talk to me. So we had this conversation in which he told me that he was dying. He was diagnosed with cancer, and he had very few weeks, even days left. So he was sharing with me that it was difficult for him to find a priest and to receive the last rites. And he was very, very close to our community. So I don't know, I think it was an inspiration of the moment. I said, well, Don was his name. Let me do this. I would hop on a plane and just go and see you and bring you the sacraments. So this was a Tuesday, and I said, well, maybe I can go on Thursday. But Thursday was a little bit complicated for me, and Friday was pretty open. So I said, let's do it on Friday. So I booked the flight, and that Friday morning, I left for Orlando in the morning. I landed in Orlando. I called him, and I said, Don, I'm here in Orlando. I will rent a car and go see you. And he said, no, I will pick you up. And he said, I told him, but you are sick. I will go with somebody else. So give me 30 minutes. So after 30 minutes, I called him. The phone rang, and it was his cell phone. So I said, hey, Don. And on the other side, the voice said, no, this is not Don. This is Bob. Don had a heart attack, and he is in the emergency room at this moment as we speak.
Wow.
I had talked to Don 30 minutes earlier. So this gentleman, Bob, picked me up at the airport, and we went straight to the hospital. And Don was actually dying of a heart attack, and he was in a very bad shape. But he was conscious, so I was able to talk to him. He couldn't respond, but you could tell that he understood what was going on. So I gave him the absolution, the anointing of the sick, the scapular, and then I stayed there for a couple hours praying the rosary, praying the Divine Mercy Chaplet. And then I needed to go because I had a plane back to Michigan. So I said, well, Don, I got to go now. I have to go back home. I will probably see you in heaven. So please pray for me, pray for us. And I left. And a few days later, I found out that he died a few hours after I had left.
Incredible.
So you think about it and how, I don't know, how God uses us. The inspiration of the moment of just going there. If you ask me why I did it, my answer is I have no idea.
Right, because it's not something that we usually do.
Exactly.
Go visit people.
You don't hop on a plane to go to another state to visit somebody. But for whatever reason, I felt that was what I needed to do. And then just being on time. And God, in His mercy, waiting for me so that Don would receive all his last rites and then enter into eternal life.
Incredible. Very good. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that. So let's see now with that amazing, because it's a powerful story, right? So sometimes you think, well, all the sacrifices that I did in my life or other moments that were, difficult make a lot of sense now that I have this opportunity to help a person get to heaven. So what would you say, for example, to a young man who is maybe considering choosing to be a priest? He thinks he's called to the priesthood, but is afraid, first of all, he's afraid of the sacrifice he'll have to do as a priest, but also he's afraid of the prospect of loneliness that is sometimes the idea, a priest is going to be alone and single and lonely. So what would you say to a young man that is a little bit afraid of the priesthood because of those things?
Well, I will respond with the words of Pope Benedict. Don't be afraid because God doesn't take anything away and He gives everything. And it is so true. Regarding sacrifice, well, sacrifice is part of life. So I think that the fear of sacrifice is a lie that the evil one brings to divert us from our vocation. Any single person in life will have to embrace sacrifice. I always tell the people, I bet you whatever you want, if you find a passage in the Gospels where Jesus says, if you come to me, you will suffer no more. Just try to find that place and I will give you whatever you want, because Jesus never said that. He said, if you come to me, you will have to take up your cross and follow me. Now, the difference between suffering with Christ or suffering without Christ is with Christ, the cross is way less heavy, but it is still a cross. So there will always be sacrifice. So being afraid of the sacrifice that a priest has to embrace is the same as being afraid of the sacrifice that a married person will have to embrace.
Right, because finally, whatever path you choose, you will always have sacrifice. If you choose not to take on any sacrifices, you'll have other sacrifices anyway.
Yeah, it's impossible not to have sacrifice in life. But the other thing is trusting God. God is with us. So even if we embrace sacrifice, we don't walk alone. So just to trust that if God is calling you to whatever vocation, in this case, Father, you are talking about the vocation to the priesthood, but if God is inviting you to be a priest, He is telling you, come with me. He doesn't say, go over there and I will not be with you. He says, come, let us walk together. So even if there will be sacrifice, because I will not lie, there is sacrifice as in any other state in life, the Lord will be with you with His grace, helping you carry that cross and make it much lighter.
Right. Very good. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this. Any final thoughts that you would give to all college students or any college student that you would like to say, well, this is what I would recommend for your years in college?
Be with Jesus. Jesus is the way, the truth, the life, And, college is an awesome time, a time in which we grow as men and women. We grow in our spiritual life. We make decisions. We become, the people that we will be in the rest of our lives. So I think that college is that beautiful time in life when you form yourself. So my advice is know that you are not alone. Sometimes, going against what the world teaches might be odd or difficult. You may be afraid of being left out, but if you are with Jesus Christ, you will never be left out. He is everything to us. The devil, the world, even our nature sometimes make us think that being with Jesus will make us miss out so many things. And that is not true. We always have, what if I do that? What if I do the other thing? The what if question is a fake question, because we can always ask, what if I do this? What if I don't do this? Just do it. If you feel that God is calling you, and if you are listening to the podcast, it's because you know that the Lord is working in your heart. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to us at this moment.
Right, you would have tuned out already.
Exactly. So follow Christ, follow that path, and I can assure you, you will be the happiest person, not only in this life, but also in the eternal life, which is the one that we have been created for.
Very good. Well, Father John, thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and your story with us. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your time with us today and listening to this episode. If you liked this content and you'd like to encourage others to listen in as well, please do leave a review in Apple Podcasts and make sure you rate this podcast show in Spotify. And if you have any questions or comments on this or any other episode, please don't hesitate to email me at info@forcollegecatholics.org. I'd love to hear from you. And if you have any questions for Father John, also send me emails there and I'll forward them to him. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you, everyone. God bless you, and we will see you next time.